in the heart of Africa, amidst the ancient highlands of Ethiopia, a storm was brewing. It was a time when most of the continent had already been carved up by European powers at the Berlin Conference, and only two nations remained free, Liberia and Ethiopia. But the Italian kingdom, hungry for expansion, had set its sights on the fiercely independent Ethiopian Empire. They thought it would be easy, that with their cannons, their conscripts, and their arrogance, they could subdue a land whose people had never known true defeat. They were wrong. In 1889, King Menelik of Shewa signed the Treaty of Wuchale with the Italian government. To Menelik, the treaty was a gesture of cooperation, a diplomatic move that granted the Italians a coastal foothold in Eritrea. But buried in the Italian version of the treaty was a clause that turned Ethiopia into an Italian protectorate, a betrayal hidden in translation. The Amharic version said Menelik could consult Italy in foreign affairs. The Italian version said he must. When Menelik discovered the deception, his blood boiled. No empire, no matter how vast or modern, would rob Ethiopia of her sovereignty. Menelik refused to be a puppet. The Italians, unwilling to lose face, chose war. It was 1895, and the first Italo-Ethiopian War had begun. Among the Ethiopian commanders stood legends: Ras Alula, the Lion of Tigray; Ras Makonnen, father to the future Emperor Haile Selassie; and Taitu Betul, the Empress herself, whose forces and spirit would tip the scales of fate. Each commander brought not just armies, but the will of a people united by the dream of freedom. The dawn of February 1896 crept over the Ethiopian highlands like a watchful eye, solemn, silent, and vast. Mists hung low across the valley floors, brushing the feet of mountains that had stood since time immemorial. Beneath them moved an army, not just soldiers, but a river of resolve. Peasants turned warriors, priests with prayer staffs and muskets, nobles draped in lion pelts, horsemen cloaked in dust and courage. From a rocky outcrop above the valley, Emperor Menelik II surveyed the marching thousands. His cloak billowed in the wind. Behind him, Empress Taitu Betul stood proud and composed, her presence a steady flame amid the winds of war. "Do you see it, Taitu?" Menelik said quietly. "The tide is with us. It moves like the hand of God." She did not answer at first. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon. "They come," she said, and indeed they did. General Oreste Baratieri and his Italian brigades were advancing, their khaki lines a pale stain on Ethiopia's ancient soil. They had expected confusion. They had expected primitive disorder. What they found was strategy, precision, and an empire awake. Meanwhile, in the Italian camp, Adequala General Baratieri sat stiffly inside a canvas command tent, poring over his situation reports. He was a man of maps and orders, but even the best maps lie when mountains breathe mist and shadows. "We're nearly out of rations," said Major Galliano, "and ammunition supplies will not hold through a full engagement." Baratieri rubbed his temples. "Rome demands a swift conclusion. We attack, but we are surrounded," Galliano insisted. "Their numbers grow daily. Some reports say 100,000. "They are savages," Baratieri snapped. "Disorganized tribes. They will break under pressure. We must strike before Menelik retreats." But doubt had taken root. The Italians had underestimated not just the size of the Ethiopian army, but its soul. February 28, 1896, the eve of collision, high above the valleys of Adwa. Ethiopian scouts watched from crags and tree lines. Drums sounded across the ridges. Low, steady beats like a heart preparing for battle. In the Ethiopian main camp, Menelik met one last time with his generals. Ras Mikhail stood tall, his armor layered with chainmail and traditional leather. "Let them come," he said, voice deep as thunder. "Let the children of Rome taste the wrath of the mountains." Roswell raised his goblet. "To Adwa," Ras Mikhail added. To the end of empire. The emperor raised his hand, silencing them. No, he said. Not the end, the beginning. What we win tomorrow will echo across the oceans. He paused, his eyes shining with a terrible clarity. They think we are shadows. Let us show them that we are storm. Nightfall. Silence. The land held its breath. In the darkness, Menelik walked again, through the camp, past sleeping soldiers and flickering fires. He passed a group of young warriors singing softly, a hymn of St. George. He stopped by a boy no older than 16, polishing a rusted rifle. Are you ready? Menelik asked. The boy stood quickly, eyes wide. Yes, Majesty, I will die for Ethiopia. Menelik smiled faintly. No, live for her, and strike well. He walked on. Above the emperor, the stars watched. Below, Adwa waited. The morning of March 1st, 1896, broke not with a song but a scream. A bugle's call from the Italian lines. They had begun their advance under cover of darkness, hoping to surprise and scatter the Ethiopian forces before sunrise. But the mountains do not forget their own, and the land had already whispered to its children. From every ridge and gorge, from brush and stone, Ethiopia rose. The Battle of Adwa had begun. Italian vanguard, 3:45 a.m., General Albertone's brigade, meant to outflank the Ethiopians from the north, found itself choking in unfamiliar terrain. The maps lied, paths disappeared, soldiers slipped on jagged stone, their boots soaked in dew and uncertainty. Keep moving, Albertone shouted, drawing his saber. We reached the Kidane Meret Plateau by sunrise, but as they climbed, Ethiopian horns echoed from above. Suddenly, bullets, the air cracked, men screamed. 1,000 voices thundered down the slopes, not just soldiers, but warriors of prophecy. The Shoan infantry descended from the ridge, led by Raswell. Among them was Fitawari Gebeyehu, a lion of a man who had once fought bandits in the south and now wielded his curved blade like a flame. Strike with the hand of Saint Tekel Haimanot, he roared. They clashed in the valley like water and fire. Albertone's men, cut off and exposed, fought desperately, their modern rifles spitting smoke, but the Ethiopians came in waves, fearless and many. Southern Ridge, S610, AUM Ras Michaels, Oromo cavalry swept down the slopes like a sandstorm. Drums thundered from the highlands as thousands of horsemen, wrapped in white, descended with spears raised and eyes ablaze. The Italians, led by General Arimondi, tried to form a defensive square, but the Oromo smashed into them like a tempest. Among the riders was a woman, Ilek, daughter of a local chief, riding with vengeance for her slain brothers. She rode without fear, hair flying, her eyes locked on the flag-bearer. She felled him with a spear from 30 paces. As the Italian line wavered, Ras Mikhail shouted, "Break them!" They did. 7:45 a.m. Menelik stood atop a hill, surrounded by his personal guards. His eyes swept the field. Smoke rose from the eastern flanks. The Italians were breaking into fragments. "Now," he said. With a wave of his hand, Razmakonen's men, veterans from campaigns in the east, charged the center. Their rifles were old, but their aim was deadly. With every step, they advanced through shouts, bullets, and blood. At their front was Dejazmak Balkasafo, bare-chested, scarred, and roaring. "We did not climb these mountains to kneel. Strike!" He plunged into the fray where steel met steel and bayonet clashed with blade. Back at the Italian camp, Ia Mim, Herr Tonston Battalion, signed 15 Ayamin. General Baratiri watched in disbelief. His battalions had fractured into isolated pockets, surrounded and outnumbered. "This was supposed to be a victory," he murmured. Major Galliano, bloodied and limping, stumbled into the command tent. "The center is gone. Albertone hasn't returned. Arimondi is likely dead. We must retreat." Baratieri collapsed into his chair. "God help us." But even God, that day, stood with the mountains. Noon, The turning. By midday, the battlefield had become a harvest of smoke and cries. Italian machine guns overheated, ammunition ran low, horses bolted, signals failed, and still the Ethiopians came. Empress Tetu herself commanded the rearguard and supply lines. She sent fresh troops to the front, dispatched messengers, and whispered prayers into the wind. "Let the land protect its own," she said. Her prayers were answered. By 2 p.m., the last Italian resistance had collapsed. Men dropped their weapons, some fled, others evening. Aftermath. The field was silent, save for the moans of the wounded and the flutter of fallen flags. Menelik rode through the battlefield, his white cloak stained with dust and sorrow. He dismounted beside a dying Italian lieutenant. The young man tried to speak. Menelik knelt beside him, offering water. "We are not monsters," he said softly. "Go in peace." Nearby, Ras Makonnen gathered the wounded. Ras Mikhail surveyed the prisoners. Ras Alula, grim and quiet, stood beside a rock where General Arimondi had fallen. "The lions have roared," Alula said. "And the world will hear it," Menelik replied. A letter from Menelik. "We have defeated an enemy not of our choosing, but of our time. We remain a free people. Ethiopia shall not kneel, not now, not ever."